you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. And I want to start off by having you think about your profession. Are you a banker? Are you in sales? Are you in the service industry? Maybe you're a bartender or a server. Well, I have a bunch of friends that are in the serving industry, and when they all get together, they love to talk about those little tiny things that don't really seem like they're very big, but it feels good for them to vent about. Like my bartender friends, they joke about their regulars, who are terrible tippers, but then every single time they come up to the bar asking for a slightly stronger drink, of course for no extra charge. Or my friends in sales, who talk about that one person who they've tried to contact dozens of times, but who just won't answer their calls. And they have to keep contacting them over and over and over again. And if they would just answer and say no, they could stop calling them. Well, what are some of those things in your profession that happen? That if a bunch of your colleagues and coworkers, your peers got together, what would you all talk about and then joke or vent about? For us, fitness professionals, personal trainers, group fitness instructors, one of the number one things we like to joke about and vent about is when people try to skip the cool down and stretch post-workout. It doesn't seem like that big of a thing, right? We get done coaching a killer workout, everyone's all pumped up after that final climactic effort, and we give that final sigh of relief and completion. We turn on that nice, slow recovery music and get ready to start ramping everyone down from what's probably the most of these people's highest intensity effort of the day. And half the people in the workout room start to exit towards the door. Ugh. I personally like to think of a group fitness training session as a roller coaster. You have highs and lows, you have peaks and valleys of intensity, maybe some crazy loop-to-loop experiences thrown in there, and then you coast gently back into the start of the roller coaster station, calmly bringing you back to where the first ride started. What would happen if you went on the craziest roller coaster of your life and it just abruptly ended and you got kicked off the ride unexpectedly as soon as you got done with that last around the world loop? Well, that's kind of what you're doing when you skip the cool down. Now look, I get it. We're all busy people with limited time on our hands. We have to get back to our jobs, our family, our appointments, the things that actually make the money and keep that bus rolling. We have to stick to our very regimented schedule. I totally get it. But for this episode, I'd like to argue my case and the desire to help you be as successful as you want to be when it comes to attaining your fitness goals, as to why you should spend at least 5 minutes of your time after a workout to give your body the love and appreciation for what you just accomplished. But before we get into the topic of the day, I want to start by thanking the sponsors of this podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Lululemon. Lululemon has some of the best athletic wear for both females and males. I pretty much only wear Lululemon when I'm not in my work clothes. The quality of material and the durability and breathability are perfect for my active life. Another one of our sponsors is Dirt Food. Dirt Food, healing and delicious superfoods made by hand and made with love. Dirt Food was created by a local San Diego friend of mine who was going through her battle with cancer and was looking to find cancer-fighting superfoods that would help defeat her 2 different types of cancer that she had. She created a delicious and healthy superfood granola that she makes by hand in small batches in her kitchen. Visit eatdirtfood.com and use the discount code DirtyDamian for 10% off. I eat it every day, and I also get it auto-shipped to my door on a monthly subscription. As soon as I run out, boom, automatically there on my doorstep with my next order. So that's Dirty Damian, DirtyDamien, no space, discount code for 10% off your entire order at eatdirtfood.com. And now, on to the topic of the day. All right, team, so what is the cool down, and what does it do? Well, the goal of a cool down post-workout is to return the body's systems to pre-exercise conditions. We are trying to decrease our breathing rate back to normal breath, decrease body and muscle temperature from its elevated state, and to drop the heart rate back to a normal resting rate. That should be the goal of the cool down. Now, there are many things to consider when doing a cool down, and we are going to go over the ones that I feel are most important. The first thing, and usually the only thing that people consider as their cool down, is the stretching of your muscles. So let's go over that one first. There are a lot of different categories of stretching, and the two that I want to focus on mainly are dynamic stretching and static stretching. When I was younger and in high school sports, I remember before every basketball, football, soccer game, we would stand in a circle and we would hold stretches for 20 to 30 seconds. We would do this all together to warm up our muscles to get ready for the explosive movements that we were going to be going through during the game. This was static stretching, holding a muscle in its fully lengthened position at a point of tension statically for a long period of time. Now, this was all the way back in the early 2000s, late 1990s. Since then, there's been a ton of research on what type of movements to do before activity. This is in order to maximize performance. And spoiler alert, static stretching actually was found to have some detrimental effects when it comes to the explosiveness and actually has been found to hinder performance and fire and muscle firing capabilities. Sorry to all my high school coaches. I don't hold it against you because I also instructed people back in the day to static stretch before activity. Hey, you live, you learn, and you change with the times. Am I right? Well, there are also two subcategories of static stretching. Those two subcategories are active or passive static stretching. When it comes to active static stretching, added force is applied by the individual, so you, for a greater intensity stretch. So force is added by you while static stretching. We will talk more in depth about this when I do an episode on mobility. This is a great strategy for increasing control in your muscles in their most stretched position and learning the ability to turn on those muscles in their most lengthened positions. This is a skill, and the more you practice it, the more independent and successful and strong you will become when it comes to functional, pain-free movement. So active static stretching takes a little bit of internal concentration and effort by yourself. And then there's passive static stretching, which involves added force that is applied by an external force. For example, a partner or an assistive device or something like that. This is done to increase the intensity of the stretch. So if you've ever gone to like a stretch U or a stretch zone or a physical therapist that stretches you out, but also applies a little bit of force or tension or pressure against you while you're in that stretch position, well, then you've experienced passive static stretching. It's important to note here that you are doing very little, hence the term passive, when it comes to this subcategory. So we have static stretching, and then now moving on to dynamic stretching. In contrast, dynamic stretching would be actually stretching a muscle while it's being moved. So for instance, standing leg swings or arm circles or deep lunging with overhead reaches. These could be slow movements under control that put the muscle into a stretch position for a very short period of time, or even quick movements like a forward leg swing to dynamically stretch your hamstrings. Unlike static stretching, dynamic stretching requires the use of continuous movement patterns that mimic the exercise or sport that's about to be performed. Generally speaking, the purpose of dynamic stretching is to improve flexibility for a given sport or activity by taking it through purposeful movements to increase comfort with the movements and the ability to complete the movements with ease. Another example of dynamic stretching would be like a sprinter doing long, exaggerated strides or walking lunges to prepare for a race. Similarly, a basketball player could use side shuffles, vertical hops, or foot speed drills as a mode of dynamic warm-up and stretching. Unlike static stretching, dynamic stretching increases full body circulation, increases heart rate and respiratory rate by using active muscle contraction and motor control as a part of improving tissue extensibility. Furthermore, dynamic stretching during warm-ups has been shown to be superior to static stretching and warm-ups for performance prior to the competition. Now, this could be due to a variety of variables such as improved neural control, which we're going to talk about next, and which I personally, through my own experiences, have found, in my opinion, should be close to, if not the most important variable. So, neural control, but it could also be increased tissue extensibility, increased blood flow, increased tissue temperature, or other various factors like that. Lots of stuff happening with dynamic stretching, and they're still trying to explore and find out everything that's going into it. Now, in order to understand why stretching is beneficial, we need to understand why and how the muscles work. Your muscles are controlled by your central nervous system, or your CNS, which is a very broad term that gets thrown around and sometimes actually just confuses people. Here's a great analogy that I like to use to describe the central nervous system and your muscles. Think of your movement as music. Stick with me here. And in order to make music, you have to have speakers and you have to have an amplifier. Well, your muscles are the speakers and your central nervous system is the amplifier. One really doesn't work without the other. And even further, you could have great speakers or muscles and a terrible amplifier, your central nervous system, and you would not get very good music or sound from that situation, right? Which is your movement. This kind of takes me all the way back to high school. So my very first vehicle, I had this beat up Geo Prism. Does anyone even know what those are? I bought it for like $1,000 off my dad, and I ended up putting a $2,000 stereo system in it. So the system cost double what I paid for the car. I bought these huge 12-inch subwoofers that were made from Kenwood. I bought 2 of them, and I stuffed them in the trunk. I also bought these sick matching speakers and an awesome CD deck. And then I got this average, or if I'm being completely honest, it was below average amplifier. I was trying to save money because I really had no idea why an amplifier worked. I figured, whoa, that's a really nice amplifier, and it is way expensive, way more than this other one. Why don't I just get this inexpensive one? I already have these really expensive high-end speakers and subwoofers. I don't need to invest in this weird electrical thingy. I don't even know what it does and why it's important. The sales guy just wants me to buy it, so I might as well just get this stupid one, this nice cheap one. I just knew that the bigger the subwoofers, the more the bass, and the cooler I would be at my bonfire parties that I would have back in the forests of Oregon, or at least that's what I thought cool was. So now the problem is the amplifier, it supplies the power for your speakers to work. So if we can take this back to your body, your brain is the start of your CNS. And there are motor neurons that go from your brain and it attaches to each muscle in your body. That motor neuron is in control of turning on each muscle fiber and groups of muscle fibers. If you have a weak central nervous system, you could have the largest muscles, and I'm talking about size here, and those huge muscles won't matter at all when it comes to strength if that central nervous system doesn't know how to turn it on to its maximum potential. Now, how the heck does this apply to stretching? Well, when we are exercising, your amplifier tells your speakers to play and work hard for that period of time that you're exercising and moving. When you're done moving, that signal doesn't all of a sudden just turn all the way off. Your muscles still have some tension in them. They are still getting a signal from the brain to prepare for more movement if needed. They are, on a microscopic level, still holding on a little bit because it is prepared to keep moving in case it is called upon to do so. I mean, think about it. They don't know when you're done. So how would they know when to let go completely if there's no cue or no sign to do so? They wouldn't, and they don't. They're doing what they need to do with the information that they're given. So when it comes to stretching, the research is still out a little bit on this, and more needs to be done in order to really know exactly what is happening. But with my personal experience and from the ideology of the people that I have learned from, and really from the thousands of hours of physical activity and exercising that I've done personally, what I anecdotally think and I think I have some wisdom here on this topic, is that our body needs a sign that we're done breaking those muscle tissues down, and that what we're ready for them to do, for lack of a better term, is we are now ready for you to let go in order for us to start the recovery and the rebuilding process. We must remember that exercise is a positive stress. It creates tiny micro tears in the muscles, and that when they recover, they are rebuilt bigger, stronger, and more resilient. So if we crush our muscles during a killer workout and then immediately hop into our car and continue on with our busy days, our body keeps that tension in the muscles and they never really end up letting go. Your central nervous system, your amplifier, is telling those muscles to still hold on tight and slightly shorten these muscle fibers into a mini contractive state. Now, here's the problem with that. Over time, this is what creates those super sore, tender trigger points on the body. Think about when you work on a computer all day long. Your neck, it's rigid. You're holding up your head in the same position for hours and hours. The muscles have been told to hold that head steady in that position, and therefore the central nervous system sends that constant signal to those neck muscles that they need to hold strong. And that signal is being sent for hours on end with no rest. And then we wonder why we have such stiff, sore necks at the end of the day. The soft tissue, such as fascia, that is surrounding these muscles and the muscle itself, they start to bind together because, hey, my body is telling me that this position is where I need to be, and my muscle does not have the endurance to flex and hold for hours. So I need to reinforce this thing. I got to succumb to the demands that my body is asking me to do constantly. Another way to think of this is, imagine if I asked you to hold a water bottle at shoulder height with your arm extended out all the way. Just a water bottle, right? Sure, that's a super light object. I can do that easily. But what if I said hold that water bottle fully extended out at your shoulder height for an hour? Or how about hold it out there for 8 hours? Now you can see how this could cause a problem. And think about it. You can drop your arm easily when it starts to get tired with very little repercussion, right? But what if your neck muscles suddenly stopped holding up your head? We got a bigger issue here, right? So this brings me back to those muscles that are still holding on post-exercise. You will start to generate tension in the body that does not need to be there now that we're finished exercising. We already get enough tension from the constant low-intensity stresses that we encounter throughout our day. You may start to acquire super tight muscles in certain areas. You might get trigger points, maybe in your shoulders or your traps or your neck. And I'm talking about that computer scenario that I mentioned earlier. And you most definitely are going to have a perceived soreness level that is higher for the next couple of days when it comes to those muscles that are being hammered during your workout. So while I don't know how much I agree that 20 to 30 second stretches post-workout are actually lengthening the muscle, in fact, I really know that they're not, because I think it would take a lot more than that to actually stretch this super resilient and strong tissues that we have. However, I do think that on a neurological scale, stretching tells the muscle to tell the central nervous system to chill out. And finally, hopefully, to just let go. The goal is to lose the tension because we are now finished breaking down and we are now done using you for performance, and we are ready to return to normal resting muscular function where we can start to rebuild ourselves bigger, better, and stronger. So circling back to the two different styles of stretching that we were referencing here, static stretching and dynamic stretching, it is important that pre-workout you do more dynamic stretching, focusing on moving through full ranges of motion, preferably similar to the type of activity that you're about to go through. For example, if you're going to do a lower body workout, you should probably be doing hip, ankle, split stance mobility, and dynamic stretching movements when it comes to those areas of the body. This should all be done before your physical activity, whether it's a workout or a sports game, or even if you're just going to go play frisbee on the beach with some friends. This is done in order to prime your body to get ready for, and for the performance that you're going to do, and hopefully help improve that performance along with helping prevent injuries from happening. Now, research says that static stretching before training can actually have negative impacts on performance due to what we were talking about earlier with the CNS telling the muscles to relax. However, these studies had participants hold stretches for minutes at a time in order to do these studies. So 20 to 30 second stretches and holds are a little bit different than 2 to 3 minutes of stretch holding. But if you're going to be playing a sports game or doing a high intensity workout or even just lifting, the research generally points to doing dynamic movements before and saving the static, longer hold stretching for after. And then if I can take this just a little bit further, I know I've talked about this before, but if you can end your day right before you go to bed with some yin yoga, yin is spelled Y-I-N yoga, it could be an absolute game changer for the amount of good quality sleep you get, as well as diminishing your overall soreness from training the following days. Yin yoga is longer stretching, usually like 3 to 5 minutes per stretch. And I use it for pre-sleep. The yin yoga experts that I follow every night say that any type of forward folding stretches are best for pre-sleep, such as sitting with your legs straight out in front of you and forward folding like you're going to touch your toes, but very, very relaxed. Maybe even putting like a stack of pillows on your thighs so that you just can kind of sink your chest onto those pillows and just sink slowly into that stretch during the 3 to 5 minutes. Those type of stretches will be amazing pre-sleep. What I do is I open up YouTube at the end of the night. I listen to a 30-minute yin yoga video, which is actually kind of on the shorter side of yin yoga, but it's just to help me wind down right before I go to bed. And it's been amazing, and it's been a game changer for me. I'd love to hear from you. If you try it out, let me know how it was for you. So that's enough on the stretching aspect of the cool down. I know that was a lot. And why this is important in letting your body know that it can relax some of those muscles that were firing during constant activity from your exercise. So let's move on to the topic of soreness and how the cool down might be able to help alleviate some of the pain that you feel post-workout. Now, I know you've probably heard people say, "Oh my gosh, I want to clear out this lactic acid in my legs. They are so sore." So, what is lactic acid and why are we trying to clear it out of the body? Well, there's a common misconception that lactic acid is really bad for you and it's making you get really sore and making it hard for you to work out and just ruining your workouts altogether. Lactic acid is a pretty simple compound when you break it down. We have different kinds of metabolism in the body when it comes down to creating energy. We have aerobic with oxygen and anaerobic without oxygen. Aerobic with oxygen and anaerobic without oxygen. And through those processes, we have something that's called pyruvate. Now, stick with me here. I won't get too far into the biochemistry, so don't just tune this out. But pyruvate is a particular component of creating energy in the body. When we're working out hard, pyruvate eventually gets converted into what's called lactate. So hence lactic acid. You create lactate. Now, lactate is a very acidic compound, but what a lot of people don't fully get is that lactate eventually enters back through a cycle and becomes energy again. Lactate eventually goes back through this cycle and becomes energy again. That's something that we really need to consider. What they have found is that lactic acid, which was once thought to be making us feel sore and all that other stuff, is actually converted into more energy than it is converted into waste. In fact, 75% of lactic acid that you create when you exercise actually ends up being turned back into glucose for you to use as energy. 75%. And what's crazy is that it goes through less steps than glucose in order to be used as energy. Wait. That's crazy right there. So does that mean that lactic acid is actually the good guy and not the bad guy? Well, here's an analogy that I learned from one of my professors in college that always stuck with me. When we did studies seeing lactic acid buildup, they find that that's what you felt the burn during training. Of course, we just used that one metric and correlated that lactic acid was the buildup that caused us to stop moving because we were burning so much and we hit that muscle failure and created soreness. But think of it this way in this analogy. I'm here in California and we have all these fires over the state right now. Now, every time the fire starts, there are a ton of firefighters that end up gathering around all these fires. So if I was just looking at it from this meta view and just an unobjectively observing bystander, I would think that every time there's a fire, there are firefighters. Therefore, the firefighters are probably causing these fires, right? Now, us knowing exactly what's happening, that sounds really silly. But this is how lactic acid got its bad name. Lactic acid is actually not the bad guy at all. It's trying to help us fight off that muscle failure and helping us generate just a little more energy in a faster way, just like those firefighters are trying to help put out and control the flames. So as long as your systems are running properly and you're breathing right and you're expelling the proper waste and breathing in and getting the right amount of oxygen in, you're going to recycle that lactate through the lactate system and create more energy. Some studies were done looking at people who were creating a lot of lactic acid through their workouts. And what they found is that they weren't more likely to have delayed onset muscle soreness than those who didn't create more lactic acid. So what that means is when you take two groups, one that is working out at a specific intensity that creates a lot of lactic acid and burn, and the other group is working at a different intensity that doesn't have a lot of lactic acid buildup or burn, it didn't have a direct correlation with how sore you got or who got more sore. That is something to think about. So that means that the lactic acid didn't contribute to the delayed onset muscle soreness, at least according to this study and at least to how they're deciphering their findings. We used to think that when you were working out and you were feeling the burn in a given muscle, that it was because of the lactic acid that you were feeling, and that was the burn. What they're actually finding out now, however, is that when you train, you're creating a hydrogen ion buildup. Free hydrogen ions that build up too quickly, and they can't be used when doing activity such as anaerobic activities. So like when you lift to a point of burning sensation or you run at a high enough level to where your body can't keep up. This is what creates the acidic buildup environment. What they're finding now is that when you work out, you are creating these excess hydrogen ions. They can't be cleared. And that's what's creating that burning sensation as you're getting closer to muscular fatigue or failure. Now, once the hydrogen ions get converted into lactic acid, it actually becomes beneficial and can actually delay fatigue. Your body can process lactic acid in some ways easier than glucose because it's already in this specific system. What all that scientific terminology means is that this actually allows you to push a little bit further and gives you a little extra energy. So lactic acid is the good guy trying to help you go longer, but it is made up of those hydrogen ions, which are the real culprits of those quote-unquote hypothetical fires in your muscles. So that burn that you're feeling is a simple byproduct of hydrogen being removed from the equation and not the lactic acid itself. Now, when you do a proper cool down, you are assisting the body in transporting some of the acidic buildup in the muscles into the lymphatic system, which is sort of like our body's way of clearing out bio waste, to where it can be cleared out and transported where it needs to go. This is kind of the practical way to think about this. This is suggested that it could be helping us with our decreasing the delayed onset muscle soreness that we feel and perhaps speed up our healing process. So if we can take a small step back here, in our bodies we have arteries. These are what take the blood from your core, your heart, out to the extremities. So arteries go out. And then you have veins and the lymphatic system that brings the blood back to the core and the heart to be filtered, cleaned, and then cycled back and pumped out again. So veins bring the blood back, but they are brought back through one-way valves. Here's where it gets a little tricky. We have this beautiful thing called a heart that pumps the blood out, but we don't have anything like that to pump the blood back. We actually have our veins, which have these tiny little one-way valves that open and close. They open, let the blood in, and close so that it doesn't go back. Now, here's the issue. When we don't move, when we sit for hours, that blood has a harder time getting back through those valves, and movement is life here. So when you hold the same position for long periods of time, This is what causes serious problems when it comes to the body's ability to circulate and help clear bio-waste buildup. This is why one of the worst things that you can do is work out hard at a very high intensity and then immediately go sit for hours and hours. Any type of movement, I'm talking fidgeting, stretching, walking, gesturing while you're talking, all of that movement helps the blood circulate. So when people say, quote unquote, sitting is the new smoking, which I've said it all the time, what the phrase really should be and what they really mean is stagnancy is the new smoking. You could be standing at a standing desk, and if it's in the exact same position, you're doing the same thing as sitting. You're still stagnant, even if you're standing. If you're not moving, that's stagnancy. So instead, the way to do it is to move from a standing position to a sitting position and back, and then do that every 20 minutes or so. Change your position. Or to take 5 to 10 minute water/walk/bathroom breaks every hour. Friends, movement is life. So bringing this back to the topic of cooling down, how does this relate? The goal is to gently move your body immediately following physical activity in order to help circulate all of that bio waste and buildup and help the body do what it is meant to do in order to enhance the recovery process, in order to lessen the effects of soreness, and in order to help effectively relieve some of the signs and symptoms when it comes to induced muscle damage from exercise. So static stretching can do this. Short, easy walks can do this. But stagnancy and sedentary activity, this will be your arch enemy when it comes to this, which is what the average Joe does once they finish their workout and they run off to work. They sit. Don't be like average Joe here. Next on the list is something that I have been diving into a lot recently. I'm still learning so much about this, but I really think that here in the near future, we are going to find out that this is one of the most important factors when it comes to your recovery and overall health. After you exercise and after your final climactic effort, we can probably assume that out of your entire day, this will be the moment when your body is at its peak heart rate. There will most likely be not any other times throughout the rest of the day where you have your heart rate elevated at this level. When you are in this elevated state, this is where your body is shifted into what we call the sympathetic nervous system. You've heard about it. It's the fight or flight mode that we all talk about. I probably say this every single episode, and I'm going to continue to say it because it's so important. Your body is an adaptation machine. It wants to adapt to the stresses that it encounters. Small stresses break the body down, and in the recovery, it adapts to rebuilding as stronger and more resilient to that specific stress. So exercise is a stress to the muscle tissues. It is a stress also by creating an oxygen deficit. It is a stress by putting you into that elevated sympathetic state. And hopefully with the right amount of recovery, your muscle tissue can rebuild stronger, your oxygen deficit is replenished, and your heart in turn becomes stronger so that it can now pump out more blood per pump in order to be able to adapt to the demands of that same cardiovascular load the next time you perform it. Here's the issue. During the workout and just post-workout, your body is in that sympathetic state, along with being called what we call catabolic. Catabolism is the state where your body is breaking itself down. Stress levels are high, sympathetic state is high, cortisol is released, and your body is in fight or flight mode. These are not inherently bad. This is exactly what you're actually trying to do when you exercise for growth. You want to create the stress that the body can repair and adapt from. However, if you go straight from a workout and you exit into the real world, what happens? Well, I'm just going to tell you what I see from the average person. Here's the scenario. Average Joe, or I guess we could say average Joe or Jolene, crushes their workout and is so busy that day that they decided to leave before the cool down. They grab their stuff and they look at their phone. They see an email that came from their job while they were working out saying that something crazy happened and they need to address this problem right away. Boom, chronic small stressor. This increases cortisol release and elevates the person into a sympathetic state further. Then they hop into their car. In a hurry, they got to get somewhere fast. They hit traffic. Boom, another stressor. They get back to work or they're back home and just more stressors on their computer, on their social media, from their kids. They need to make dinner for their family, but everyone's going crazy. They eat dinner and they watch some crazy drama reality TV show that gets them all up in their feelings. Do you see where I'm going with this? Their body never came down from that sympathetic state. And now we wonder why we get terrible sleep. Remember how important sleep is in our recovery? If you have not listened to the episode on sleep yet, that's going to be your next listen. Or we wonder why our body is so sore from our workouts, or why we aren't seeing any results, even though we're working out 5 to 7 days a week and working so hard. The body is never allowed to go from catabolism to anabolism, from sympathetic to parasympathetic, from fight or flight to rest, digest, and repair. Now let's rewind time and go back to just after the workout. Average Joe or Jolene decides, you know what? I might as well stay and cool down for 5 minutes. I really like this stretch song that the coach put on, so why not? Here is where the magic happens. This is where I argue the cool down is most important. Yes, muscle tissue stretching is important. Yes, moving and clearing up the bio waste is important. But using your breath to calm the body's elevated heart rate back to resting heart rate and recovering back to pre-workout respiratory breathing rate, this right here is what I would argue will be the most important aspect to your body's ability to recover and rebuild and grow from your workout. There are tons of things in your body that happen automatically. You digest your food. Your heart pumps. Your brain intakes unimaginable information every second and filters through what is important. This is all done without your effort. A lot of this stuff is out of your control. And that's a good thing, right? Can you imagine having to focus on your heart beating and consciously have to tell it to beat every second of your life? That would be crazy, and we'd get nothing else done. Hey, what are you doing, Damien? Oh, nothing. Just the same thing that I've been doing for my entire life, concentrating on making my heart beat so that I don't die. Yeah, that's really not going to work. But the breath is one of these automatic things that you can actually override, and you can control it, which is a huge twist and should really be considered on so many levels. And which is why this topic is being scientifically studied like crazy right now. It's being found to have huge, and I'm talking massive, impacts on our body's internal chemistry. If your body is catabolic, think breakdown. It, by definition, cannot be anabolic, think build up. So there needs to be a shift in your overall body chemistry that tells it to stop breaking down and to start rebuilding. What if I told you that your breath can be this on and off switch if you learn to control it? And it's not particularly challenging either. Now, I want to do a whole full episode on breathing and how to do it and when it comes to a lot of different lifestyle situations and when to use it. But for right now, let's just focus on post-workout breath and how to do it. Hopefully by now you're bought into why sticking around for the cool down is so important for you and the success of your fitness goals. Let's run through some action items on exactly how to cool down post-workout. Most of the time, group fitness workouts give you about 5 minutes, which is not a lot. This is actually should be the bare minimum. If you can go longer and you can do more, then definitely you should go longer. But let's just assume we only have 5 minutes. And then if you ever end up getting more time, you can just lengthen out each one of these items to match the time that you have. So action item number 1, first, you want to keep the head above the heart. This is strictly for safety. If your blood is being pumped to your extremities during your workout and you all of a sudden bring your head down, let's say you're doing a standing hamstring stretch and you go to touching your toes immediately after your highest intensity effort, and then you come up out of it too fast, yeah, we know what happens. I've seen a few people get lightheaded or even pass out from bringing their head below their heart too quickly and then trying to come back up too fast. I prefer to find a seated position and start from there. Number 2, next, find a comfortable position. Maybe it's crisscross applesauce, or maybe it's legs extended out in front of you, or maybe once you get there, you can get into a 90-90 upright position. Whatever keeps your torso upright and is semi-comfortable for you to be in for the first minute. The first thing you want to do here is start to relax your body. Tune into your body's heart rate and start to breathe slowly and deeply. You are actually noticing the heartbeat drop as you gain control of your breath. Your eventual goal is to seal your lips and breathe in and out your nose. Now, this is very challenging. It can be at first because we've breathed through our mouths for so long. It's challenging post-workout after a huge challenging effort to close your mouth. So if you find breathing in and out of your nose is too uncomfortable or too stressful, just breathe whichever way gets you the most air into your body. That's okay. But the eventual goal is to nasal breathe as much as possible. Take a 4-second inhale, a slight pause and hold, and then an extended exhale. You could do this right now. Even if you're driving, just don't close your eyes. Just do this now. Take a 4-second inhale, nice deep inhale, 2, 3, 4, a slight pause, and then exhale, deep, out, out, out. I bet you feel better already. Your goal is to lengthen both your inhale and your exhale throughout the entire cool down, but making sure that the exhale is even longer than the inhale. I like to shoot for an 8-second exhale or so. The elongated exhale is one of the most important parts of your recovery. This is the signal to your brain and body to down-regulate and to start the recovery process. Your inhale should be aimed at your belly, so filling your belly first, letting your belly button expand right into your chest, letting your chest rise, and then even if you can, one day let your back rib cage expand third. Imagine your body as a balloon filling with air and expanding. The exhale should be like you're trying to fog up a window with your breath. So you're trying to fog up a window with your breath, but eventually with your lips sealed. That's how the exhale should be executed. Now, third, next, you want to start to focus on the main muscles you work during your physical activity. Did you do a lot of squats and lunges? Maybe start with a forward fold hamstring stretch by going to touch your toes. So let's just pick that stretch now, and we can connect your breath to your movement and to each stretch. This doesn't have to be just for this stretch, but let's just take this as an example. So here's what I mean. A lot of people I coach think of stretching as a battle. They are trying to fight their way into the deepest range of motion they possibly can. And then they try to just reach and get to their toes, and they hold their breath and they're fighting through this intense, uncomfortable feeling of stretch. Can you see what's wrong here? You're doing the exact opposite of what the goal is. You're still internally telling your body that there is a stress. Post-workout stretching should not be about how far you can get into each movement. It's not a competition. Don't look over at flexible Felicia and see her touching your toes, and then look over at bendy Bob and see him bringing his forehead down to his knees, and then you look at you who can barely get your hands past your knees, and you're like, well, shoot, I have to try to get as far as they're getting. I got to try to compete with them and force my way as far as I possibly can go into this stretch. That's not what it's about. As with most physical activity and most anything when it comes to fitness and nutrition, this is about you and where you're at. Don't worry about anybody else. You want to put a gentle stretch on the muscle. You want to feel tension, but if it was a scale of 1 to 10, maybe you're at like a 3, a 4, or a 5, somewhere down there. Once you're there, tune out the outside distractions and work in. Start to focus on the breath. Inhale deep to the diaphragm, filling your belly, then your lungs. Fill it with air. Slight pause at the top. And here's the most important part. As you start your long 8-second slow exhale, you're starting to imagine the muscle that you're stretching relaxing, lengthening, letting go. If you do this for 2 or 3 rounds, you will be absolutely shocked at what happens. You will maybe start that stretch with your hands going just past your knees, but if you do this breath strategy correctly, you'll notice that your hands slowly move closer and closer and closer to your toes. You'll be shocked to find that you may even be able to get an extra 5 to 10 inches or further into that stretch just by relaxing into it rather than fighting into it. And controlling the breath, specifically the long extended exhale, you're taking control of your nervous system. Remember the amplifier, your CNS, that tells those muscles to hold on and to keep a small amount of tension post-workout. Well, this is turning that amplifier down or maybe even off and giving your muscles the opportunity to rest and in turn recover. And then our main goal, which is to rebuild and be more resilient and stronger. The sooner we can get our body out of that catabolic state, the sooner we can get our body to let go of some of that tension in the muscles, the sooner we can become anabolic and grow. And you are in complete control here, especially the more that you practice it. So moving on to number 4, as you do this with each muscle you stretch, focus on the big rocks first, the places that you broke down the most. And then you can individualize your stretches for your problem areas. So once you hit the muscles that you worked out, you think about the problem areas. Everyone has problem areas. Maybe you have a desk, you sit at a desk job and it's your hips, your low back, your neck. Maybe you're on your feet all day and it's your ankles, your legs, your hips. Where can you get better? Where do you find that you have these chronic nagging pains? Well, spend more time working in and avoid that urge to fight the pain. And I mean, chronic pain is just your body's way of telling you that something is not right. Something isn't tracking properly with your movement, or something is being overused. Your stretch post-workout is a great opportunity to listen, be non-judgmental with yourself, and to really reflect on what your beautiful, incredible body does for you on a daily basis. And number 5, lastly, that rolls very nicely into what should be your final focus and final minute of your recovery and cool down. And that's just reflection. Take a moment of gratitude for exactly what took place. There are a very, very large amount of people all around the world who do not get to work out, whether it's personal choice or whatever, who have not yet chosen to start their fitness journey, who struggle with an internal battle every single day when it comes to their health. Exercising, taking time to work out, it is an amazingly hard thing to do. And you just took the last hour or whatever time period it was to work on your health and fitness and wellness. You invested in yourself. You may have done something in that workout that last year you thought was impossible for you to do. You may have accomplished something with the people around you that very few people get to experience. Exercise and moving your body is something that you do not to punish yourself for what you ate or because you hate the way you look, but actually the exact inverse of that. You exercise to be proud of what your body can do because you're going to get better today more than yesterday, just a little bit. Because no matter where you are right now in this moment, we can always grow and prove to ourselves that if you want it bad enough, anything is attainable. Your final minute of your cool down should be a reflection of gratitude, of self-love, and pride in yourself. If post-workout all you do is just move a little bit, find your breath, and reflect, I can guarantee you will see unimaginable results. And I hope that by this point you know that I'm not just talking about the physical results. And remember, none of this will ever happen if you take off right after you finish exercising. As much as I love being around you, don't get me wrong, I don't tell you to stay and cool down because I need an extra 5 minutes with you. That's not why I emphasize this and stress the cool down. It's because I know that it will help you become more successful in attaining what you want out of your workout. So if we can just wrap this up and tie a little bow on it, and remember that your recovery doesn't even have to stop after the stretch and the cool down. You constantly bombard your brain with low intensity stressors throughout the day. So take as many opportunities to balance that out with recovery or breathwork breaks. Little movement breaks throughout your day can increase productivity, move that bio waste, and balance out the psychological mental work that you do all day long, along with increasing your daily movement, which can help with your caloric burn. Each night, Take a moment to slow down. And maybe instead of sitting in the same position that you sit all day while you're watching your Netflix or your TV shows, maybe you get a nice soft blanket or a mat or a rug and you lay down on the floor. And you breathe into some stretches while you're relaxing and doing whatever you need to do to decompress. I personally prefer to do yin yoga right before bed, but maybe for you, it's just some mobility exercises that you can relax into before you sleep. Your recovery can roll into the following days as well. Movement is life. Finding balance is what life is all about. And being proactive and taking control rather than being a victim and just reacting to what is happening to you, instead of taking the steps that you can take to regulate what your body does. This can absolutely change everything when it comes to you chasing your health, fitness, and wellness goals. So hopefully this gave you something to think about. And I know in upcoming episodes, we'll discuss other ways of recovery, such as cryotherapy, hydrotherapy, infrared lighting, and modalities of that nature a little more in depth when it comes to recovery. And you know you can always contact me if you want help or any information. Or in reverse, if you would like to educate me on what's worked for you and information that you know, I would love that as well. All right, Dream Team, that's it for today. Please share with me any knowledge, thoughts, or questions you may have on today's topic. I'll make sure to answer and discuss on the next episode. You can ask your questions in the comments section or message me on any of the social media platforms. Also, I would be so thankful if you shared this episode with any of your friends or family that may be able to benefit from today's podcast. I would love it if you could do me a solid and screenshot this podcast and share it on your social media platforms and just write one takeaway, one aha moment that you got from this episode. This will help me know what's really valuable to you, and so I can keep the good information coming. And it also lets your network know if this podcast is worth a listen to them. Thank you so much for listening and learning here with us on the Livin the Dream podcast. We are so grateful for you being a part of this lifelong learning journey. If you have any topics you'd like to discuss, please let us know in the comments or by messaging me on Instagram at CoachDamian_SD. Be kind to someone today, smile at someone today, and leave every person you come into contact with better than before. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.